Listen, I think all these guys are coming in and working hard. I mean, you see what Deshaun's done. Obviously, unfortunately, with a bunch of injuries that have been season-ending the last couple of years, but he's put in the work. Shedeur's really done a great job. He's been here a lot all spring.
Cleveland, we need to talk, because after weeks of waiting, dodging, and refusing to say a name out loud, the Browns finally moved. Todd Monken just laid out an actual plan for Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson, and insiders inside Berea are calling it the moment this quarterback competition stopped being a mystery and started being a real ticking clock. This isn't a vague, we'll see how camp goes anymore. There's a structure now. There are dates, and once you hear them, you'll understand why the whole league is suddenly paying attention again.
Well, I think
that's a long way. That's a long way out.
I think what Monk said the other day, we'll know by the first game who the starter is going to be. And I think
this year.
Yeah, but I think listen, somebody might have a great year and they're our quarterback forever. Okay, or somebody, neither of them might. I think it's way, way, way early to be talking about who's going to be our quarterback next year. We got to figure out who's going to start the first game.
Here's what's actually happening right now. For weeks, Monken refused to tip his hand on Shedeur versus Watson. No hints, no leans, nothing for reporters to grab onto, no matter how many times someone tried to bait him into it at the podium. Then, this week, that changed. Monken revealed that both quarterbacks will get one start apiece in the first two preseason games, Watson and Sanders splitting the opening test runs before anything gets decided. The first one lands August 15th against the Bears in Chicago. The second comes August 22nd against the Bills in Buffalo. 2 live, real games. 2 actual chances to answer the question everyone in Cleveland has been asking since spring. Think about what that actually means. This isn't a coach hiding behind vague competition language anymore. This is a coach putting a calendar on it. And according to people who cover this team closely, that third and final preseason game against the Patriots on August 27th is where things get real. Whoever starts that game is expected to be the guy walking into week 1. That's not a rumor floating around message boards. That's the actual framework the organization has set up for itself, whether the results end up matching the plan or not. And that framework matters more than it might seem on the surface, because for years, this exact kind of clarity has been missing in Cleveland. This is a franchise that has run through nearly 20 different starting quarterbacks over the last decade. Nobody in that building wants to admit it out loud, but everyone inside it knows the quarterback carousel has been the single biggest reason this team hasn't been able to build anything that lasts. So when a brand new head coach walks in and immediately puts real dates and real stakes on this decision, that's not just camp small talk. That's a coach trying to end a problem that has haunted this franchise for a decade, and doing it in his very first training camp. But here's the part that should make everyone lean in a little closer. Monken didn't just hand out a schedule. He handed out a challenge, straight to both guys, in public. And it wasn't soft. Stop for a second, because this is where the real tension actually lives.
I mean, look, you can see it. I mean, obviously, Jimmy mentioned it, but the attention to detail and telling these guys what to do. I mean, I think, remember earlier in the spring, we had a routes on air session and quarterbacks were throwing the ball short, or it was a windy day, and he started over and said, listen, you guys are NFL quarterbacks. You got to start making these throws. So he's going to hold everybody accountable, whether that's on the field, being on time in the meeting room, dressing accordingly, doing all the right things. So, and the guys are listening to him, and they're buying into what he's selling.
According to reporting out of camp, Monken has been blunt about what each quarterback still needs to fix before he's ready to be trusted with the job. For Shedeur, the issue isn't arm talent or command of the huddle in the big picture sense. It's the small stuff, getting in and out of the huddle faster, sharper decision-making. Monken has said, in almost so many words, that he wants to stop feeling anxious watching Shedeur operate the offense in real time. That's not nothing. That's a coach admitting there's still hesitation there, even after everything Shedeur showed as a rookie. And then there's Watson. If you thought the accuracy concerns from earlier in camp were the whole story, they're not even the biggest issue anymore. Monken's exact words were about ball security, and the number attached to it is impossible to ignore. 6 interceptions at this stage of training camp. 6. That's the kind of number that doesn't stay quiet in a building where the head coach is already on record saying he wants someone to make it clear who deserves the job. It's also the kind of number that fans and analysts who've watched Watson's last few seasons unravel are pointing to immediately, because it fits a pattern that stretches back further than this camp. That's the real shift here. This competition isn't being decided on reputation anymore, or on guaranteed money, or on who the front office invested in years ago. It's being decided out loud on turnovers and huddle speed and the exact things that show up on a practice field every single day. And both guys know the tape is being watched that closely, because Monken has made sure they know it. Now, zoom out, because the numbers around this competition tell their own story. Prediction markets have shifted hard towards Sanders as the favorite to open the season under center, with Watson trailing behind him and Dylan Gabriel still lingering as a wild card nobody's fully counting out. That's not what people expected when Watson first returned from his second Achilles tear this offseason. Back then, the assumption around the league was simple. Healthy veteran with a guaranteed deal walks back into the starting job almost automatically. That assumption has not held up. Instead, what's happened is a real, measurable shift in confidence, and it's happening in public, in real time, with real money behind the numbers. That's a real signal that belief in the building and belief outside of it is bending in the same direction. And once markets start moving before the actual decision is made, that usually means the people closest to the situation are leaking exactly what they're seeing, even if nobody wants to put their name on it directly. So, if the numbers are already leaning one way, what happens when ownership says something completely different?
Yeah, but I think, listen, somebody might have a great year and they're our quarterback forever, okay? Or somebody, neither of them might. I think it's way, way, way early to be talking about who's going to be our quarterback next year. We got to figure out who's going to start the first game.
If Deshaun Watson plays the way that you guys hope he does if he wins this job, can you see a world in which he's around beyond?
Yeah, I think there's all kind of possibilities out there. So yes.
This is where it gets almost uncomfortable. Just weeks before Monken's preseason plan went public, Browns owner Jimmy Haslam said flatly that Watson has a great chance to be the team's starting quarterback in 2026. Not a coach evaluating film in real time, the owner. Publicly, before a single preseason snap had been thrown. And ownership statements like that don't happen by accident in the NFL. They happen because someone at the top wants a specific message out there, whether or not it lines up with what's actually unfolding on the practice field. And that's the tension nobody in Berea wants to say out loud. You've got the head coach building an actual evidence-based framework tied to preseason starts and specific correctable flaws for each guy. And then you've got ownership seemingly signaling that the guaranteed money, the 5-year, $230 million contract, still carries weight in this decision no matter what camp reports say. Those two things are not the same conversation, and when they collide, that's usually when a competition stops looking as open as everyone claims it is. Here's the bold claim nobody wants to say directly. The front office might be more locked into Watson than Monken's own words suggest they should be. Because remember, this is a coach who inherited this quarterback room fresh, with no history propping up either guy. He didn't sign Watson to that contract. He didn't draft Shedeur in the 5th round after watching him fall further than almost anyone expected. Monken's only real currency in this decision is what he sees on the practice field and in these next 3 preseason games. And by his own account, right now that means turnover problems on one side and hesitation problems on the other, with neither guy fully answering the call yet. There's also a wrinkle here that doesn't get talked about enough. Watson's last real football memory for most of this fan base isn't a good one. Before this offseason, he hadn't made an in-game appearance since October of 2024, and the tape that exists from his time in Cleveland has been rough by almost every measure. Completions in the low 60% range, more losses than wins in his starts, and a run of injuries that's turned a franchise-altering contract into one of the most scrutinized deals in modern NFL history. 6 new interceptions in camp doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens on top of years of exactly this same conversation. Compare that to what Shedeur walked into as a rookie, a 5th-round pick that fell further than almost anyone in recent memory expected, thrown into a broken quarterback room in the middle of a lost season, and he still finished the year with 7 touchdowns, a Pro Bowl selection, and enough flashes that people inside the building started using the word growth instead of project. That's the swing this competition is actually built on. Not just talent against talent, but a proven disappointment against an unproven possibility, and a head coach who has to decide which risk he's more comfortable carrying into week 1. Let's be real about where this actually stands right now.
How do you guys feel about the fact that you headed back into training camp still with a two-way quarterback competition going on as opposed to sort of knowing where you're going?
You want to take that easy one?
Listen, I think all these guys are coming in and working hard. I mean, you see what Deshaun's done, obviously, unfortunately, with a bunch of injuries that have been.
So here's where the Browns' quarterback decision actually sits today. Todd Monken has finally put real structure on this competition. 1 start each in the first 2 preseason games. A real deadline building toward that August 27th matchup with the Patriots. Shedeur Sanders is being told to speed up and clean up his operation. Deshaun Watson is being told in no uncertain terms to stop turning the ball over, after 6 interceptions already piling up in camp. And hovering above all of it is an owner who's already said Watson has a great shot, even before the preseason snaps that are supposed to decide this thing have been played. Think about where that leaves both guys heading into August 15th. Watson gets a real chance to prove the turnovers were just camp rust, in front of coaches who've made it clear the guaranteed money isn't buying him extra patience. Shedeur gets a chance to prove the hesitation Monken pointed out is already fixed, and that the belief building around him all offseason was earned, not hyped. This is no longer a background story simmering quietly in Berea. It's a real decision with real dates attached to it, and it's about to get answered on the field, in front of national television cameras, with every throw getting broken down the next morning by analysts who spent all offseason arguing about exactly this. And there's a bigger picture sitting underneath all of it. Whatever Monken decides over these next 3 preseason games isn't just about week 1 against whoever the Browns open the season against. It's about whether this franchise finally breaks the pattern that's defined it for a decade, bouncing from one quarterback to the next without ever committing to a real answer. If Shedeur wins this job on merit, on turnovers and command and everything Monken has laid out publicly, that's a real foundation to build around for years. If Watson wins it back, on reputation, on guaranteed money, on old tape from Houston years before 2 Achilles tears, that's a very different bet, and one plenty of people around this league are already skeptical of. There's one more angle worth sitting with before we get to the actual pick, because it explains why this camp feels different from every other open competition the league claims to have every summer. Most of the time when a team says the job is up for grabs, everyone already knows the outcome. The starter is protected, the backup is there for depth, and the whole competition is theater for a fan base that wants to believe their suspense. Cleveland doesn't have that luxury right now. Ownership has over 200 million reasons to want Watson to succeed, and the coaching staff has zero history with either guy pulling them one way or the other. That combination almost never happens in the NFL, and it's exactly why national analysts who ignored this quarterback room for years are suddenly building entire segments around it.
Look, I think everyone's a fan of each guy's, right? Some guys like Deshaun, a lot of people don't. Some guys like Shedeur, maybe some people don't. It really doesn't matter, and those guys don't care about it. Both, like I said earlier, those guys have been here working hard. All they want to do is win. They want to help this team out. They know our success on the field is paramount for the team and for our fans and this organization and for this city. Like, I think Jimmy said it, having 8 wins the last 2 years is unacceptable. And, I was talking to Daryl earlier. We had a ton of opportunities last year to win a lot of games, and we just didn't. But we feel comfortable about those guys. Whoever wins the job, we're going to support them. We hope the fans support them. And
it also explains why the tone out of Berea has shifted so much in just the last couple of weeks. Earlier in the offseason, most of the conversation was about potential, about what each guy could become if things broke right. Now, it's about numbers. 6 interceptions, completion rates in practice, snap counts split evenly across 2 preseason games, specific dates on a calendar. That's the sound of a competition getting real, not staying theoretical. Hype talk turns into actual evaluation the moment a coach starts attaching hard numbers to his complaints, and that's exactly what's happening here. And there's a psychological piece to this too that shouldn't get overlooked. Shedeur has spent his entire rookie year and this entire offseason being talked about as the guy with something to prove, the 5th-round pick who fell further than anybody expected and then outplayed his draft slot almost immediately. That kind of chip on his shoulder tends to translate well into exactly the kind of details Monken is now asking him to clean up: tempo, command, decision-making under pressure. Watson, on the other hand, is in a different spot entirely. He's not fighting to prove he belongs in the league. He's fighting to prove the version of him that showed up in Houston years ago still exists somewhere underneath 2 Achilles tears, a lost ear, and a contract that's become one of the most talked about mistakes in recent NFL history. Those are 2 completely different mental battles, and only one of them tends to produce a player who plays looser once the lights come on. None of this means the decision is already made. Monken has been careful, almost stubbornly careful, not to tip his hand in any direction, and there's still a very real chance either guy separates himself once real preseason snaps start counting. But the structure itself tells you something the vague language of earlier this offseason never did. When a coach built an actual framework, attaches real dates to it, and starts publicly naming specific flaws each quarterback needs to fix, that's not a coach protecting somebody. That's a coach genuinely undecided, trying to force the answer out of the only place that actually matters: the field. So buckle up, because the next 3 weeks are going to move fast. August 15th in Chicago, August 22nd in Buffalo, August 27th against the Patriots, the game everyone in Berea is already treating like the real deadline. Every throw between now and then is going to get replayed, dissected, and argued about, because for the first time in years, nobody actually knows how this ends, and that uncertainty alone is worth paying attention to. Is Deshaun Watson going to clean up the turnovers fast enough to hold off a rookie who already has the numbers trending his way? Or is Shedeur Sanders about to turn Monken's own framework into the fastest quarterback change Cleveland's seen in years?
Whichever way it breaks, this camp has already accomplished something Cleveland hasn't managed in years, turning a quarterback decision into an event the entire league is watching in real time, instead of a formality everyone quietly already knew the answer to. That alone says something about how genuinely open and how genuinely unpredictable this whole thing has actually become for a franchise that has rarely gotten to feel that way at the most important position on the field. Drop your pick in the comments right now, Team Shedeur or Team Watson. Let's see which side actually shows up louder. Smash like and subscribe.